So now it's here we are today. You've gotten these results back, and what's in it?
Well, Aaron, unfortunately, the numbers are stunningly high. I'm talking about bacteria, especially fecal bacteria. Let's get right to the numbers. When we looked at E. coli, which is an indication of fecal contamination, the numbers in our first sample, we took 3 in a small area, 8,600 CFUs, or colony-forming units, 3,700 in the second sample, 6,300 in the third. The EPA standard for recreational waters, for water that people swim in, is 0. You're not supposed to have any. Now let's look at total coliform. That's another indication of bacteria. The first sample was 57,000 CFUs. The second sample, 43,000. The third sample, 45,000. The EPA standard for recreational water, according to the A&B labs in Houston that did the testing for us, they tell us that standard is less than 100. So as you can see, these numbers are much, much higher than that. Now, the lab manager at the lab said these numbers are huge. He said, we do water testing every day. That's what we do. He's never seen numbers like this in water that is publicly accessible. And it's not just fecal bacteria that he's worried about. He said these numbers are a concern, are an indication that there could be something called Vibrio vulnificus. That's the flesh-eating bacteria. And he said he's really worried about the people who would have waded through this water and still are wading through this water.
So they want to help them as much so that they're never just walking out of here and feeling like they're going back onto the street. They've worked with them throughout the process here to help them adjust to this new world order that they're going to be living in after this. Help them adjust to this new world order,
But first, the USGS says a powerful 8.1 magnitude earthquake hit just off Mexico's southern coast overnight. Already, at least 15 people are reported dead, and there is widespread damage. The quake triggered tsunami waves and coastal evacuations.
Video shows how the earthquake caused violent shaking inside an office building. Mexico's president says the earthquake is the strongest to hit his country in a century. Vladimir Duthier of our streaming network CBSN is following this disaster. Vlad, good morning.
Good morning. Mexico's southernmost states are some of the poorest regions in the country. The earthquake shook many of the buildings to the ground, and officials there are still unaware how widespread the damage is. This video appears to show the moment the massive 8.1 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of southern Mexico. People inside covering their heads as the shaking continues. Rubble from collapsed buildings in Chiapas littered the streets as rescue workers shoveled through the debris for survivors.
I'm in Puerto Escondido, where a large earthquake just rattled this area.
Reporter Jeff Paul of our CBS station KTVT was in southern Mexico at the time of the earthquake.
It felt like a train was rolling beneath our feet, and then moments later, that's when we started to see the buildings shaking from side to side. It sounded like pieces of metal just scraping together.
Video across the border in Guatemala appears to show power lines and transformers exploding. Mexico's President Enrique Peña Nieto told reporters they've already received reports of loss of human life and damage that cannot be quantified. Hundreds of miles north in Mexico City, the earthquake shook office buildings, restaurants, and even the famed Angel of Independence monument. Frightened people ran from their homes, worried they could collapse. I realized it was an earthquake right away, Mexico City resident Alonso Canavas said. It was very strong. Mexico's president says they will assess damage to life and property in the coming days. The USGS says an earthquake like this was expected in this part of the world because of how the tectonic plates move under the Mexican peninsula, Nora.
All right, Vlad, thank you.
West, you are in 100 miles per hour or more. Naples, Fort Myers, Sarasota, same story. And even into Key West, from all the way to Key West to Tampa, could be still a hurricane, Cat 1 or Cat 2, all the way up into central or northern Florida. Winds in Atlanta, probably 60 or 70. Wow, it's a crazy storm.
At least 74 large wildfires are raging in 8 western states. They have destroyed more than 1 million acres combined. Several of the newest fires are in California. Here's Jamie Yuccas.
The hills surrounding Los Angeles have been burning for 3 days, with flames coming dangerously close to neighborhoods and freeways. Fueled by 100-degree days and thick brush, the La Tuna fire is burning an area that has not seen a fire in 45 years. Burbank residents quickly began defending their homes. This man used a towel to beat back the fire as it came within feet of his front door. He ran at the very last minute.
The firefighters say they can defend it, but it's pretty nerve-wracking to watch.
We are doing mandatory evacuation.
Hillside homes closest to the flames were told to pack up and leave, while 1,000 firefighters and air power battled the blaze overnight. Evening winds pushed 50-foot flames up the canyons, creating tornadoes of smoke. Los Angeles Fire Chief Ralph Terrazza.
And we saw extremely erratic weather and wind. The wind can change directions. It can go 180 at 20 miles per hour within a few minutes.
By morning, 3 homes were lost and 6,000 acres burned. Paul DiPaolo was going to watch college football, but watched the fire instead.
You can just hear that crackling, and it makes you know that it's right in your backyard.
The western heat fueled a fire east of Portland, Oregon, that stranded 140 hikers on Saturday night. Hikers were forced to overnight when the fire grew too close to a popular hiking trail. They were still waiting to be rescued on Sunday.
Hillsides like the one behind me were burning just hours ago, but winds have slowed and temperatures didn't get as hot today. There is supposed to be a cool down that starts Monday. Elaine, firefighters hope to get a better handle on this blaze when highs are in the 80s instead of close to 100.
Jamie Yuccas, thanks.
One of the things I want to talk about is how many of you love math? How many of you hate math? Well, I want to talk about the odds for a minute. Okay, my first question is, what are the odds? Okay, here we have a total solar eclipse on August 21st in Europe, 103 years ago, which took place in 1914 at World War I at the new moon of Elul. So it's like, yeah, there's total solar eclipses, but what are the odds you'll have one on the new moon of Elul? And did you know the last total solar eclipse across the United States was also 100 years ago, 1918 in World War I. So that tells you the odds of having a total solar eclipse across the United States is at least 1 in 100. You following me? You understand that? And having one on the 1st of Elul, also August 21st, the odds was 103 years ago. Okay, so the odds of having a total solar eclipse across the whole United States that people are going to see, 1 in 100. Okay, now how about hurricanes? It is said that no major hurricane has made landfall in the United States in more than 9 years. Okay, September 13th, 2008, there was Hurricane Ike. It made landfall at Galveston, Texas, but it was only a Category 2 hurricane. So now, what are the odds of having a Category 4 hurricane? Well, the last Category 4 storm to hit the United States was Charlie in 2004 that hit Florida. But the last Category 4 hurricane to hit Texas was 56 years ago in 1961. So we're looking at, what are the odds that a Category 4 hurricane would hit Texas? Well, 56 years ago was the last one. Now, what are the odds of having both events occurring in the same week, where you have a total, not a partial, a total solar eclipse crossing the entire United States at the beginning of Elul, and a Category 4 hurricane hitting the U.S. and Texas in the same week? What are those odds now? Because that sure didn't happen 100 years ago. Does that increase the odds a little bit, having a hurricane and a total solar eclipse in the United States? Look at this. In Luke 21:25, where it talks about being signs in the sun, moon, and stars, it also says there will be the roaring of the sea and the waves in the same verse. So what are the odds, not only that you have those things, what are the odds there would be a Bible verse explaining the end of days? We would see signs in the sun in the same verse talking about the sea and the waves roaring. What do you think the odds are of that? Now, do you want to see something really astronomical? Luke 21:25 is one of my favorite verses, because Genesis 1:14, God says there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. And Luke 21:25, Jesus confirms there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. So what are the odds of having both the total solar eclipse and a hurricane the same week? Well, what are the odds that it would happen on the 21st and the 25th? The solar eclipse happens on the 21st. The hurricane happens on the 25th. Now, coincidental? I mean, God is pointing us to this verse saying we are living in these times. Who else but God could do that?